Vermont now has the possibility of voting in the first transgender governor after history was made Tuesday night. Christine Hallquist became the first transgender candidate to win a major political party's gubernatorial nomination. She defeated 3 others to clinch the victory. The former utility executive will be up against GOP incumbent Governor Phil Scott in the 2018 midterms. Joining me now from Vermont is CBS News political correspondent Ed O'Keefe. Hi, Ed. How did voters there respond to Hallquist's campaign?
Well, at least tonight, Democrats overwhelmingly picked her in a 4-way race for the governorship. And look, this is a woman who's managed to run a smart campaign and to get ahead of her 3 other candidates. The race here is one in which Democrats are kind of in the crouch position because the Republican incumbent, Phil Scott, is actually one of the more popular GOP governors across the country. So I think part of this is that Vermont Democrats aren't necessarily paying a whole amount of attention to this, at least not yet. Mm-hmm. But in talking to Hallquist this week here in Vermont, she told me that she's convinced that general concern or opposition to President Trump could very well rub off on Governor Scott and make it difficult for him to hold on. Vermont is one of those states, and there's only a handful, I think it's just Vermont and New Hampshire, that elect their governor every 2 years. So that puts the governor on the spot far faster than most state executives. And while he's managed to work with Democrats, especially on issues like gun control in the wake of the school shootings in the past 2 years, he is someone who has managed to upset members of both parties and isn't believed to have much of a conservative base, in part because of that work on gun control. So Hallquist now believes he could be vulnerable. And she reminded me that an incumbent Vermont governor has not lost re-election in this state since the 1960s. So she actually said she'd be more impressed to see that happen than to see her elected as the first transgender governor.
So what then will be the defining issues in this race? Because this sounds like this will definitely be a race where the issues will be of utmost importance.
And wouldn't it be great if all campaigns were like that? Yeah. She is running on a platform of trying to ensure that the entire state, which is predominantly rural, is wired for broadband. As a former utility executive, it's something that actually concerned her a lot in the private sector. But beyond that, I think you're going to see this turn into a campaign about who can better cooperate with members of both parties and who might push to make some other changes to the state's gun control laws and continue to boost the economy. While the country overall is doing pretty well, parts of New England, parts of the Northeast still struggling to rebound from the recession of a few years ago, and she's pretty committed to making sure that can happen here. But it would be something. It would be quite telling if the president himself becomes an issue in this kind of a campaign, mm-hmm. and would signal that popular Republican governors across the country, and there are a handful of them, Charlie Baker in Massachusetts, Larry Hogan down in Maryland, that if the president's unpopularity can rub off on a governor, that shows you the Republicans are in big trouble across the country.
Now, Ed, what about issues like health care and education? Are those proving to be important to the Vermont constituency?
Hallquist, like many other progressive Democrats, said that she's supportive of Medicare for all, which, of course, has become a bit of a litmus test for Democrats across the country, and said that she would like to see the state focus more on funding public education. She knocks Governor Scott for trying in the last few years to push for charter schools or more of less of an emphasis on public education, but this is a state that has a good tradition of that, and Hallquist said she'd like to maintain that. So undoubtedly, both of those issues, as they are important across the country, will come into play here in Vermont as well.
So could Hallquist prove to be somewhat of a Democratic star if she does well in this race?
Oh, I would think so. Any of the firsts, no matter who they are and whatever party they are, instantly become icons,
right.
Both generally and in their own party. So certainly, I would think that she would very quickly become a bit of an icon for Democrats. We should point out that there are more than 200 openly LGBTQ candidates running in both parties this year. And when I asked Hallquist why she thought that is, she said it's in large part due to the president, that a lot of these people feel threatened or feel emboldened to step up and run for office up and down the ballot given their concerns about what the Trump administration is doing to the nation when it comes to civil rights and health care and other issues. Remember, Vermont was the first state in the union, or among the first states in the union, to really push for marriage equality or same-sex marriage legalization. So they have a tradition here, certainly, of accepting and pushing for gay rights, especially transgender rights now as well, given that they've nominated a transgender candidate. So definitely someone who I think pretty quickly now is going to get a lot of attention from Democrats across the country who may not have realized that she was running at all.
All right. Ed O'Keefe in Vermont. Thank you.